We're on Fiesole Hill, which overlooks the Arno Valley and the city of Florence. I'm Giulio Gentile, and I take care of public relations for the Villa San Michele, the hotel which is part of the Orient Express chain, and which was once a monastery belonging to the Franciscan order. So here you can see the facade, bearing the coat of arms of the Davanzati family, who in 1630 donated the land upon which the monastery was built. Why don't you come with me? And now we're inside the Villa San Michele, and as you can see, we're entering a chapel, which is now the hotel reception area. It's very unusual for a hotel to have a chapel as its entrance hall, but because it's been maintained as a chapel for centuries, we've found that people like that touch of history, of the Renaissance, and of the Florentine Renaissance in particular. There's the Davanzati coat of arms on the ceiling. And if you'll follow me, I'll show you the monastery cloister, which has now become our restaurant. From the chapel we enter the restaurant, Il Chiostro, or the cloister. We still call it by that name, because this was the monastery's cloister for centuries. During all of those centuries when it was a monastery. In those days, it wasn't roofed in, and there were plants growing everywhere. But since we needed a restaurant, we had to put a roof over it. However, we've maintained its historical appearance. And as you can see here, it's still full of charm and of human warmth. And now I'm going to show you another dining room. This is called a cenacolo, which means the Last Supper. As you can see here, there's a fresco by Nicodemo Ferrucci, and this was painted in 1600. And you can easily tell which of the 13 figures is Judas. Look, all of the others have a halo around their heads, and Judas, as you can see, doesn't have one. Just beside the cenacolo dining room, there's yet another little cloister. Now this used to be in the open air, but now we've covered this and we've turned it into a bar. As you can see, the hotel is full of romantic little spots. And now we're coming to the jewel in Villa San Michele's crown. This is the Loggia, which runs the whole length of the monastery and which is separated between the bar and the restaurant areas. It's the best spot in the hotel because you can see all of Florence from here. You can see the entire city as well as the Arno Valley, which lies radiant before us between the hills of Chianti on one side and Fiesole on the other. And now we're leaving the monastery and we're coming into the hotel grounds and gardens. As you can see, you've got the windows here and the rooms behind. And the swimming pool is up here. It may be the pool with the best view in the whole of Florence, perhaps even in the whole world. Behind, there's nothing but woods, all around us. And over there, you have a little loggia with a Roman statue that's thought to be a statue of St. Michael. In the kitchens, Attilio di Fabrizio is in charge. Hello, my name is Attilio di Fabrizio, and I'm the chef at Villa San Michele in Fiesole. I'm going to show you my recipe for fried zucchini flowers, stuffed with pecorino and marjoram. To make this, you'll need a couple of zucchini flowers, 2 kinds of pecorino, one medium and one older, some flour, some milk, a tomato, some marjoram, and then some cooking oil. First of all, we take the flowers.
priviamo del gambo e degli steli.
We remove the stems and the little side leaves, and especially the pistil from inside.
Uno di questi fiori.
We open one of the flowers,
Completamente, la adopereremo come
and we place it now on the serving plate.
Ora prendiamo i due pecorini.
And then we take the two types of cheese,
La andiamo a tagliare.
which we'll cut up into small pieces.
Una volta tagliato lo metteremo in
And we place the cheese into a salad bowl.
Prendiamo la maggiorana.
We take the marjoram,
Anche questa la andiamo a tritare.
and now we dice it very finely so that it can be blended in with the cheese.
Mettiamo assieme al formaggio. Questo se lo fate a coltello.
Here I've used a
Se invece
knife,
vi aiutate con un mixer
and
o un
here
tubo,
is what it looks
questo è il
like
risultato finale.
when you do it with a mixer.
Da qui ricaveremo delle piccole.
We knead the mixture,
Andiamo a farcire nei fiori.
and we separate it into little balls in order to stuff into the flowers.
Prendo cura di attorcigliare le punte in maniera che il formaggio
We have to
resti
twist up the
dentro.
end of the flowers so the cheese stays inside, and then we put the flowers in the milk.
Una volta passati tutti nel latte,
After wetting them for a few seconds in the milk, we now roll them in the flour.
passiamo nella farina per benino.
We very carefully cover them with flour,
Avendo sempre cura che le punte
making sure that the
restino
flowers remain tightly closed.
Una volta finito di farinare i fiori,
And then,
se cerchiamo che l'olio
when we've
sia
covered them with
bollente,
flour,
l'olio deve essere
we heat up the
bollente,
oil, and it has to be very hot,
ci mettiamo i fiori dentro.
and we put the flowers in to fry.
Vanno fritti rapidamente.
We let them fry for a short time on a very high heat.
Un olio molto forte rapidamente per
It has to be hot because the frying has to take place very quickly so the cheese doesn't run out of the flowers.
andiamo a piazzare il fiore sul fondo del piatto.
We place the other flowers on the plate,
Poi le zucchine fritte.
then the
fiori
fried
fritti.
flowers,
Si prende uno spicchio di
and then we
pomodoro
cut up a quarter of a tomato into little cubes,
metteremo come guarnizione.
and we place this as a garnish on the plate alongside the flowers.
Fiori di zucca
And
fritti
here
con pecorino
you
dolce
have
e
our
marjoram.
fried zucchini flowers with mild pecorino and marjoram.
Voilà, avec notre fleur de courgette, je suggérerais des
With the zucchini flowers, I suggest a white gratellacco, a Tuscany wine from the southern part of Tuscany. It's a nice dry wine with a fruity nose, and I find it goes wonderfully well with this dish.
Nous sommes maintenant dans le parc archéologique.
Here we are now in the archaeological park of the town of Fiesole, and it's probably one of the most interesting archaeological sites in the country, because here there are traces of Etruscan temples and also of funeral monuments.
Monument honorifique de la civilisation étrusque. On ne sait pas ce qu'il y avait avant.
We don't know what came before the Etruscan foundations. However, after the Etruscans, there were the Romans, and after the Romans came the Lombards. And here, right in front of us, we have a theatre that was built near the end of the 1st century after Jesus Christ, and it holds nearly 2,000 people, and it's still used even nowadays for what we call the Estate Fiosolana, and this means the Fiesole summer. According to Giulio, it would take more than a year to see everything in Florence. Let's start our sightseeing with the cathedral and its multicolored marble. Its architecture is typical of the Roman Florentine style of the 11th and 12th centuries. Its bell tower was begun by the painter Giotto. Its enormous dome was built by Brunelleschi in the 15th century, and the facade was completed by Emilio di Fabbrici in the 19th century. On the Piazza della Signoria, which was designed beginning in 1540 by Como de' Medici I, you'll see the monumental sensuality of Benvenuto Cellini's bronze Perseus across from the Palazzo Vecchio. Admire other classical masterpieces such as Cacus de Brunelli's Hercules or Michelangelo's colossal 4-meter sculpture David. Your trail will inevitably lead you towards the Ponte Vecchio, which is crossed by Vasari's unique aerial hallway linking Vecchio Palace to Pitti Palace. A stone's throw away at the main marketplace, Chef Di Fabrizio is doing his shopping. Can you distinguish between hams from Parma and Tuscany? Now this is a Parma prosciutto, a Parma ham, and one from Tuscany now. This one comes from Tuscany. Have you ever tasted a 2-year-old Parmesan?
Perché di questo ci sono diverse stagionature, quella che prendiamo noi è di 24 mesi.
After building up an appetite at the market, let's now head to the Loggia at the Villa San Michele. In the kitchen, the chef is leading his troops drum in hand towards satisfying your appetite.
Ma c'è una legumi alla griglia e 7 insalate miste, seguono 3 tagliatelle a tartufo, una tagliatelle, 2 tortelloni e 2 spaghetti pomodoro e basilico. Porzioni ravioli, Antonio, fate... Andiamo a presentare il filetto di bue.
So here we have a recipe for a fillet of Chiana beef on a bed of spinach with a Brunello sauce.
Le ossa di manzo,
To make this,
gli spinaci,
you need some beef bones, spinach, a fillet, a mixture of tomatoes, carrots and onions,
burro,
some shallots, butter, sugar,
zucchero e
and of course some red wine.
Come prima fase
Now we start by roasting the bones,
e si mettono a tostare in forno
and we do this in an oven at 250 degrees for about 40 minutes.
minuti circa o perlomeno finché le ossa non siano ben
The bones need to turn a nice golden brown.
Poi si tirano fuori le ossa,
Then we take the bones out of the oven,
scolano dal grasso,
we remove the
mettono in una
fat,
pentola
and we put the bones in a saucepan with some oil and wine,
e si fa ridurre
and
all'interno.
we reduce the wine by a third.
Va passato tutto e a questo punto
And
abbiamo
here you
questo
have the red wine base we get from that.
fondo al vino rosso. Andiamo a tritare lo scalogno.
And then we prepare the shallots.
Mettiamo il burro a sciogliere.
And these are lightly fried in butter.
Ci mettiamo lo scalogno dentro e lo facciamo rosolare piano
And
piano.
once they start to brown,
Quando lo scalogno comincia a rosolare,
we then add the sugar
mettiamo lo zucchero e ce lo mettiamo dentro, lo versiamo dentro.
and we stir it in.
Bisogna aspettare che lo zucchero cominci
We
a
have to wait
caramellare.
until the sugar starts to
Nel
caramelize.
mentre noi andiamo a cuocere il filetto di bue chianino.
And while that's happening,
Questo è un filetto
we
di
take care of cooking the
bue
Chiana beef.
chianino, è un tipo di carne
Chiana
che
is a
si trova
species of beef
particolarmente
raised in
nella
Tuscany and
Toscana.
Umbria.
Mettiamo un po' d'olio nella padella.
We pour a little olive oil into the frying pan, always virgin olive oil,
Mentre si scalda.
and then we heat
Quando
it.
lo zucchero comincia a caramellare,
And when the sugar starts to caramelize,
fermiamo la cottura dello zucchero con del vino rosso.
we wet it with some red wine.
Si lascia bollire finché il burro,
and then we let it to boil
finché il vino,
to reduce the
sia
sauce base.
ridotto. E mentre saliamo la carne,
We now salt the meat,
si lascia cuocere.
and we leave the meat to cook
Il
slowly.
tempo della cottura varia
The
anche
cooking time, of
in
course,
base a
varies
come
according to
vuole cotta la
taste.
carne.
If you like your meat very
Per una
rare,
cottura rare
cook
ci
it for
vogliono
6 or
7
7
minuti,
minutes.
medio
Medium
15
rare takes about
minuti.
10
Se si
minutes,
vuole ben cotta,
and well done
l'acqua
cooks for around
15 minuti.
a quarter of an hour.
Si fa rotolare prima da una parte, poi
We
dall'altra
sear the
per un
meat
paio di minuti
on both sides
e
for a
poi lo
couple of
gireremo
minutes,
sui lati.
and then a
A
little
questo
on each
punto che il
end.
vino è quasi ridotto del tutto,
And once the base has boiled down,
noi ci andiamo a mettere il fondo che abbiamo ricavato prima.
we add it to the one we've already made,
Questo si lascia bollire per
and
una
we let
decina
this
di
boil
minuti.
for about 10 minutes.
Prende gusto e nel mentre anche
And then we
si
taste,
aggiusta di sale,
and we
di
add salt if
sapore.
necessary.
Qui invece abbiamo gli spinaci.
And now we'll prepare the spinach.
Questi sono spinaci freschi,
This needs to be fresh spinach,
sfogliati a uno,
nicely
lavati,
separated,
bianchiti in
washed
acqua
and blanched in
bollente,
salted boiling water
salati
for just
per
2
2-3
or 3
minuti
minutes.
in più. Fatta questa operazione,
So here's your spinach, prepared as I've just described and drained.
già cotti e strizzati dall'acqua. Questa è la salsa.
And here's the sauce which we made earlier
preparata prima,
and which we've now
già
strained.
passato e tutto. Qui abbiamo la carne che sta cuocendo.
The meat is now
La
cooked,
leviamo dal fuoco,
and so we take it off the heat
si lascia riposare un
and we let it stand for a few minutes before we carve it.
nel mentre andiamo a saldare gli spinaci
And while it's standing,
con burro,
we fry the spinach in some butter,
pizzico di sale,
we add a touch of salt,
mentre si finiscono di scaldare gli spinaci.
and while the spinach is warming up, we can now carve the fillet.
Prendiamo il piatto,
So we now take the plate,
ci mettiamo gli spinaci al centro
we place the spinach in the middle,
e la tagliata tutta intorno.
and now we place the meat around the spinach.
Se la salsa calda, la
We
andiamo a
add our
salsare.
nice hot sauce,
E questa è la tagliata
and here's the completed recipe called
finita.
tagliata brunello.
Avec ça, je proposais des
With this
brunello
dish,
montalcino.
I suggest a Brunello Maltacino. It's a 1998
Et
fabulous
c'est un année
vintage.
vraiment extraordinaire, je trouve, avec.
Oui, on est dans le cœur du Chianti.
Yes, we're here in the heart of Chianti territory,
Autour de nous,
and the area around us is the Cailoli area, so of course we're in Tuscany.
et naturellement, nous sommes en Toscane. Et le vignoble que vous voyez ici,
And here, the vineyard you can see in front of us is part of the estate called the Cappanelli estate. The Cappanelli belongs to Mr. Sherwood.
Du Chianti contient trois types
Chianti vineyards are made up of essentially 3 grape varieties.
Disons que les quantités plus importantes sont
In terms of sheer numbers, the most important grape varieties are the Malvoisie, the Sangiovese, and the Camaloli.
Ici, vous voyez les barriques qui sont en bois de chêne.
So here we are in the cellars, and what you can see here are the oak casks, which come from the Allier area of France.
Le vin est gardé dans des barriques pendant un an.
The
La
wine is
particularité
matured in
de
these
cette
barrels
cave
for a
est que
year.
nous sommes 3 mètres sous
And the
terre,
special feature of this
et le mur
cellar
en face,
is that
c'est
we're
du
3
rocher.
meters underground, and the wall ahead of us here is made of rock. And what's special about this rock is that it's a galestro rock, which is porous and powdery. and so it's a permeable rock, which means that inside the cellar we have ideal humidity for maturing wine, that is to say between 90 and 95% humidity. And this is Kappa Nelly's olive oil. Eating bread with olive oil and a glass of wine. There's nothing better.
Così tanti come passa il tempo, ragazzi.
Ora vi andiamo a preparare la sfogliatina tiepida ai lamponi.
Here's a recipe for a raspberry pastry with raspberry sauce. To make this, we'll need a puff pastry, prepared the day before or purchased from the market, some confectioner's custard, already made and put in a piping bag. We'll need some raspberries, some raspberry sauce, some icing sugar, and some yogurt for decoration. And to make the confectioner's custard, you need some butter, sugar, and flour. So let's begin by making the dessert.
La pasta sfoglia che la tireremo con mattarella.
First of all, we roll the pastry.
Aiutandosi sempre con della farina.
And we use some flour so that the dough doesn't stick to the rolling pin.
La si tira finché non arriva a uno spessore di 3-4 mm.
We'll roll it to about 3 or 4 millimeters in thickness.
Poi la buchiamo.
And then we'll prick it. Like this all over.
Questa operazione si fa per evitare che cuocendo
so that it doesn't rise too much while cooking.
La mettiamo nella teglia.
And then we place it on a baking sheet.
Poi si butta in forno e si a 200.
We then put this in an oven between 180 degrees and 200, and when it's about half cooked, we sprinkle icing sugar on top of it.
Si finisce di cuocere la sfoglia.
We stop cooking the pastry before it begins to caramelize on the surface.
Il prodotto finale.
And this is what it looks like when it's finished.
Una volta cotta deve essere così. Dalla pasta sfoglia che abbiamo cotta prima.
From the pastry now,
ricaviamo dei dischi.
We cut enough 8 centimeter circles like this,
del diametro di 8 centimetri,
in order to accommodate the number of guests you have.
Uguali al numero dei commensali. Andiamo a disporvi i lamponi a corona.
We now place the raspberries in rings around the pastry.
Poi ci mettiamo la crema pasticcera al centro.
And then we fill the middle with custard.
Il sovrapponiamo.
We'll make 2 layers.
Questa va passata per 3-4 minuti in forno.
And then the whole thing goes into a 180-degree oven for 3 to 4 minutes.
Una volta fuori si mette dello zucchero a velo
And when it's done, we sprinkle on some icing sugar.
Prendiamo il piatto.
We decorate the plate.
Per fare la decorazione.
And then we place the pastry on the plate. And so you have your raspberry pastry with raspberry sauce. With this dessert, I'd like to suggest the moffato della salla, which goes well with any dessert. So here we are in a spot which is very typical of Florence. It's a restaurant called Latini. In fact, it's more of a cafe than a restaurant. And as you can see, there are tables full of people. You see, it's here that the people of Florence, the real Florentines, come to spend their evenings. These people love getting together in crowded places like this to eat typical Florence cooking. So what they'll have, for instance, is minestres and huge cuts of meat, generally called Florentine steaks. And so it's here that the locals come and they share their stories. They come to trade their secrets. They love trading secrets. The Latini establishment has been here on this same spot for 100 years. The night is well advanced now, so let's sit on the Ponte Vecchio with the young people of Florence and simply await the dawn.